Hi, I'm Chris Lee, and this is Virtually Speaking. Joining us today is Nonny de la Peña, regarded as one of the most influential pioneers in virtual and augmented reality and immersive technologies and immersive journalism. In 2022, Nonny received a Peabody Award introduced by the Oscar Award-winning director Alejandro Inarritu. And in 2022, she was inducted into the South by Southwest Hall of Fame. Recently, Nonny was named a Wall Street Journal Technology Innovator of the Year, a Wired magazine Make Tech Human Agent of Change, and she's been called the Godmother of Virtual Reality by The Guardian and other media. Fast Company named her one of the people who made the world more creative, and she was one of CNET's 20 most influential Latinos in tech for her pioneering work in immersive storytelling. Her latest endeavor is as the founding director for narrative and emerging media at Arizona State University. As a Harvard graduate, a New America Fellow, a Yale Poynter Media Fellow, and winner of the Knight Innovation Award, Nonny is widely credited with creating the genre of immersive journalism. Currently a member of the BAFTA Virtual Reality Board, she's a former correspondent for Newsweek, and her virtual reality work has been featured by the New York Times, the BBC, Mashable, Vice, Wired, and many others. And showcases around the globe include the Sundance and Tribeca film festivals, and the World Economic Forum in Davos, the Victoria and Albert Museum, the Moscow Museum of Modern Art, and Games for Change. She has more than 20 years of award-winning experience in print, film, and TV, and her spatial narratives are currently met with critical acclaim. So please join me now with the incomparable Nonny de la Peña. Well, hello, Nonny de la Peña, PhD. Thank you for joining me here on Virtually Speaking. How are you doing?
Hey man, thanks for having me. This is fun.
Absolutely. I know you've been busy and it's been a crazy year for you so far. It's already almost the middle of the year, and you have accomplished two things that people wait their entire lives to accomplish, a Peabody Award and a Hall of Fame award at South by Southwest, correct?
It's been an extraordinary spring, I have to say. The last few months are just unbelievable.
Yeah. So we're going to definitely have to dive into that a little bit. And of course, I met you years ago, and I remember an experience that I think you wanted me to remember, and what you really are all about, which is creating this immersive experience for people to really feel things in a new way that they really couldn't do before. And you, as a journalist, you were working, I think it was Newsweek you were working with, and you just came into this idea of using virtual reality. So I went to your offices and I went into this situation with real audio from an actual, it was a assault by a boyfriend to a girlfriend or a wife. And I went in that room, into that house, and felt it. I couldn't even finish it because it was so powerful, and I got what it meant for domestic abuse victims, and in a way that I never could have without you. So thank you for that, and thank you for what you've been doing all these years. Tell me a little bit about how that all started for you and leading you up to where you are today.
So it really began a little bit later. Although I was a print journalist, I also became like a documentary filmmaker. I wrote actually on stuff on TV shows. But I was always thinking about ways to put people on scene and really have them connect to real stories. And in 2007, along with a digital artist named Peggy Weil, we built a virtual Guantanamo Bay prison in Second Life. That's the OG of the metaverse. And it was a really interesting project because the real Gitmo was off limits to most citizens and press. But suddenly we found ourselves inundated with visitors trying to learn more about the infamous prison. So after that, I was like, wow, man, this kind of technology could be used for all kinds of journalism. And I began my journey. I think the next really huge hit was at the Sundance Film Festival. Yeah. I had their first VR piece there ever, they'd ever shown, Hunger in Los Angeles. And that was followed up by the first VR piece ever shown at Tribeca Film Festival called Use of Force, about Border Patrol violence. And since then, I've done stuff on Syrian refugees, LGBTQ homelessness, worked with the Japanese American National Museum on incarceration of Japanese Americans. I have a piece premiering in a couple of weeks at Tribeca on Lyme disease, believe it or not, and undiagnosed Lyme disease and the unfair treatment of patients. So it's been a crazy career. And more recently, I've got a really cool new hat where I am now the founding director for Arizona State University on a new center on narrative and emerging media, but here in downtown LA. It's super cool. It's in the old Herald Examiner building, and it's like old journalism, and now I'm bringing in the new journalism. And even cooler, it was built and designed by a woman named Julia Morgan, first woman to ever have her license to practice architecture in the United States. So it's the first kind of a building, and we're going to do more firsts in this building. It's super fun.
Wow. So that is a lot to unpack there. And of course, an incredible journey. And I think, the most important thing that people need to understand is you also developed VR to a point where you could use it more. I think, 3D printed your first, wearable lenses, if I'm wrong. And now you see this emerging VR technology that you saw coming, and the use for a major use for back when you started. How many years ago was that when you started the VR Quest?
Well, the first one, like I said, it was 2007, but the goggle journey really started working out of a lab in Barcelona. And really, it's a piece people don't know as much about, that put you in the body of a detainee in a stress position. I had all this Freedom of Information Act material invited into the lab of one of the most amazing thinkers, Mel Slater and Maria Sanchez Vives in Barcelona. And they invited me in to build this piece along with Peggy. And then that led to the first article about immersive journalism, using virtual reality for first-person experience of the news. That was published by an MIT Journal Presence, and it's still their second most downloaded article that they have. So that was 2010, followed up by Hunger. And during that period of time, Palmer Luckey was the lab kind of intern at USC. And we only had this $50,000 pair of goggles. And when Hunger got into Sundance, the head of the lab, Mark Bolas, was like, you can't take this anywhere. So that became the first attempt to make goggles, and with Palmer Luckey making the goggles, driving our truck across the U.S., crashed my hotel room, et cetera, et cetera. And then 9 months later, Palmer went on to start Oculus Rift, which Facebook bought for $3 billion.
Wow, so that's the founder of Oculus.
Mm-hmm.
And you worked directly with him. And when you say Hunger, I want to bring it to everybody's attention. Hunger was it was homelessness, or it was hunger in LA, but it was homelessness in LA. Somebody who had diabetes and didn't get the food fast enough. So he succumbed to a diabetic coma right there on the streets of LA. And you had the real audio from, was it a 911 call or?
No, I decided, I really felt that the hungry people and with a lot of families too, were not, I wanted to make the invisible visible, to
right.
use invisible technology to actually create more visibility. And I had an incredible intern, and together we were going out to food banks to record audio. I actually thought what we were going to record was a moment where food banks were running out of food all the time. And I thought, what does that mean for a parent to have to tell their kid that there's no food, we have to go? But what I found was, in recording that audio, was that parents would just go silent. They would just drop. And while what my intern was at this scene, when suddenly this whole thing erupts, and it was crazy. The guy drops into a diabetic coma. The paramedics are horrible to people. The audio of the way paramedics treated people is astonishing. The food bank lady's overwhelmed. There's too many people. And in the midst of the chaos, somebody tries to steal food. And using that audio, there was no GoPro cameras. Using that audio, we then rebuilt it digitally. And I spent like $700 of my own money because I had this vision. And I had to get it done. And I had to learn how to be a little bit more of a C# coder. I begged and borrowed a lot of favors. Some extraordinary people in that period of time, not just Palmer Luckey, but a guy named John Brennan, who I'm so very close with, who built all the virtual cameras for Ready Player One and Lion King 1, and now he's on Lion King 2, and it's a genius. And he played in a mocap suit every one of the characters in Hunger and cleaned up those files. Wow. Anyway, so extraordinary.
And a mocap suit is a motion capture suit.
That's right, yeah.
I caught that.
Thank you. So incredible project with an incredible period of of people who all came together, recognizing these technologies were the future,
Right.
and
That
trying
these stories needed to be told, that these invisible people needed a voice and also a visual, and for people to be able to really, because when you're experiencing this, which is what I felt in that house with that domestic violence 911 call that you also built and reenacted and created for people to experience, you don't feel it. It's just over there. It's something you read about and it's awful and you move on. But when you're in it, when it's obviously when it's your family or your friend or your loved one, it's one thing. But if you're there in the presence of that situation, the man falling into a diabetic coma, and you can feel it and see it, it means so much more to you, because it brings the humanity to the listener or the viewer or the reader. And this is something that we never could do in the past. And I guess you see a whole future for being able to tell stories, and also to get people to empathetically buy into or relate to better situations that they never could before. Is that really your end goal here?
Yeah, really, it's that connection, right? I'd done stories like 24 hours in the of crack. It was a cover story we did at Newsweek on crack cocaine, and I spent time in a crack den, writing about it. And there's an incredible female reporter named Martha Gellhorn, who was married for a little bit to Ernest Hemingway, and she called it the view from the ground. And that was the goal as when I was writing stuff, when I made documentary films, but none of it conveyed the impact as feeling like you are there, that you're embodied on the scene.
Right.
And that feeling, I mean, we didn't know when hunger, opened up. We had no idea. And the reaction was extraordinary. And we would end up staying open 5 hours more than we meant to. And our lines were around the block the entire time. And it was a moment when I really recognized that this crazy idea I had worked.
Yeah. And all the way to today, the Peabody Award that you received this year, and the wonderful director who I guess was the person who they chose to induct you or make a presentation for you. What was his name?
Alejandro.
It's a hard name to remember.
Yeah, Alejandro Gonzalez Inarritu. So Inarritu is one of the top directors out there, and I introduced Alejandro to VR, and he did an incredible piece that won the first Oscar for VR. So if you watch that, it's also nice. He thanks me on stage at that moment, at that award ceremony. And
at the Oscars. Mm-hmm. Wow. And it was for, what was it called?
Carne y Arena. So that piece was a vision that Alejandro had after coming to see Hunger, and then he would come and see my pieces and slowly raise the money to build his own piece, which has been traveling. So so Alejandro kindly agreed to introduce me in my Peabody Award, which when it's somebody like that who made Birdman and Revenant and
it's life-changing.
And the compliments from him.
Yeah, I mean the words that he used to address you and explain to people how you affected him in the video that I've seen is absolutely, and everybody, we can show it at the end of this interview as well, and I tell everybody to go check it out. But we'll post at least a link on this interview for people to see that. But he's just so well spoken and so well describes who you are and what impact you had on him and others. So it was really beautiful and really well said. So that was, I'm sure that must have been pretty awesome. But you've been surrounded by incredible, awesome people. You don't have to name drop, but every time I hang out with you, I mean, it's this person, it's that person, these amazing people who are all a fan of yours and wanting to help you, really do this. So it's an interesting place we're in right now, because the metaverse is starting to be spoken about so much more. And I feel like you've been living in and creating the metaverse for years. So what's your take on where this is all going, and what's kind of the new vision that you have? Because you always hit it right on the mark.
Yeah, I think I come from a genuine place on this. I grew up in Venice, California, and went to Venice High, and ditched plenty to go to the beach and hung out with my favorite hoodlums, and sometimes still do. And but I was a smart kid, and I got into Harvard when I was 17. I'd actually had this boyfriend who'd come over the summer before from Ohio State who was like, "You need to apply to Harvard." I was like, "Really? Really? All right, I'll do that." And I just didn't expect it. But I got in when I was 17. I'd never been to the East Coast in my life. When I showed up to school, I had no coat, no boots. So I had to do this kind of always in my own sort of bootstrap way. And the way I sort of put it is like, I figured that out and I figure this out. So when I've got, an idea and I just sink my teeth into it, I am that dog with a bone until I make the thing that I want to make. And so immersive journalism was it. I mean, I had people fingers in my face, like colleagues going, "That's not journalism. You can never do that. That's never going to work." I mean, like, oh my God, even recently, it just shocks me
Yeah.
that the pushback on it. But
It doesn't make any sense. You understand the pushback on some things, but when I've heard about the pushback with you, it doesn't make any sense. But the other funny thing is you're like the most likable person somebody could ever meet. And that's why you have so many great people who are your friends and helping you. And it's shocking to hear that you really had any, resistance from anyone. It doesn't make sense.
well, I can be stubborn, I guess. So no, it's true. And I've had amazing people work with me. I mean, the list of folks who've come through Emblematic, helped create these pieces. I mean, it's a team, right? Producers,
Yeah.
engineers, artists, who are willing to join me on this vision. And I'm really, really grateful. I know that people put in really hard hours sometimes, like in ways that nobody should have to.
Well, that's a film biz. No, I'm just kidding.
It is a film biz, right? It is a film biz. Making stuff is hard.
Yeah.
Making
24/7.
Yeah, making stuff is hard. Making good stuff is even harder.
Yeah.
So
what about the metaverse? What's like, I mean, you've been living in it. Like I said, you've been creating it. It's funny because I was thinking about talking to you and I said to myself, oh my goodness, like she's been creating that. She probably is the number one person people want to consult with them on how to make a room, on how to make a town. I mean, what is the metaverse? What's your vision of it? And how can businesses and, people who are trying to tell a story, how can it be helpful, and what do you think is going to happen initially and then maybe long run?
Well, I think we're going through this funny period right now that I think is a mistake, but there'll be some interesting thing that comes out of it. We're kind of in that moment where we went from theater stage to film, and we watched My Girl Friday recently. Great film, but it could easily be all set in different theater stage, design. It's all static in rooms, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're doing that in business right now. We're trying to recreate, conference tables and chairs and have people gather that way without realizing that the space doesn't require that. What it requires is experience. And as far as the metaverse, you're going to have these large gathering spaces. You're going to meet with people, and there'll be small ones. We made one during the pandemic where we gathered in my team, and it was just a platform floating in the sky. And we had these mics that if you clicked your controller, it would go louder so people know who was speaking. But what we ended up doing, there were some balls around, and we ended up somehow, I don't know how it started. Somebody threw a ball over the edge, and we're all looking over the edge to see when we could see when it would stop falling, because we were up in some infinite space. Pretty soon, we're all just the edge throwing balls over the edge. But it was this joint, funny, weird experience that we were having together in the space.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. That's what's going to engage people. It's going to build teams. It's a sense of shared experience in these wonder spaces that don't have to be limited to, a conference room.
Really creative, a lot of opportunity for being completely creative and creating an experience that's very memorable.
Yeah, that's right. It's going to be interesting as we transition through these different things. Education is going to totally transform.
Yeah.
You're not going to expect kids to just sit there in their seats. They'll be able to move their bodies through spaces. I'm working with my husband right now. He just wants to take his students into the Sistine Chapel. I'm like, okay, I'll make that for you.
Right.
And by the way, I've been building a software, which you may or may not know of, called Reach.love. And that software is a button-based system to let people just make their own spatial content without knowing how to code. I mean, it was a rough ride for me to have to learn how to be a C# coder, and I never got great, but I got enough to make my own stuff and then understand what other people could do. But I'm trying to make something that's much more intuitive, shared across all devices, and just browser based, so you don't have to download anything. So I've been working on that, and we actually have we should be deploying our beta this summer.
Wow. So what is it that ASU hired you for, and what are you doing with them over there in downtown LA? What are you doing? What's that all about?
So it's super exciting. President Crow at ASU has gone all in on immersive.
When we say immersive, we're talking about immersive journalism.
No, we're talking about immersive.
Immersive everything.
Yes.
So that's metaverse, right?
It includes the metaverse, but metaverse
and
is
VR
and augmented reality.
Okay.
And AI-driven narrative and machine learning type exercises within virtual reality and different experiences that come with machine learning.
I've been reading all these articles lately because Google probably knows that I'm interested in it, but about AI is actually writing your your jokes, writing your scripts, writing your content, writing your ads for you now.
So I'm gonna do an event around AI narrative in my new building. So because I think it's super interesting what's going on.
Yeah.
This idea of being transported to a place as a group, that's really your metaverse, right? The metaverse is when you're in a virtual space that is shared. Sometimes immersive content is just a one-on-one experience, and sometimes it's larger. But it doesn't really matter. All those things are built with the same kind of underlying technologies, the same building blocks. And that's what Arizona State University is embracing in a huge way. So as part of that, I was hired to create a new center on narrative and emerging media. Our graduate program, we hope it's going to be launching this fall, middle of August. And actually our applications are going to be going live any day now. So you look for narrative and emerging media. And we've got some scholarship money to give away to start for this first cohort.
Wow.
We just got approval, so our applications are going up late. But anyway, then I'm going to have a really interesting, center on research and haptics. How do we use, physical body devices? For example, with Project Syria, you would wear a haptic vest and you would feel the bomb going off in Aleppo. And I had a deaf woman go through that, and she engaged with me for weeks about it, even though she couldn't hear anything. And again, also with the head of the festival for months. And this idea that we could use haptics for storytelling and make it more inclusive, I think is a really interesting project. So there's that, and we have to have a skunk works to build stuff and help grow startups, endeavors by the students. And then we have this incredible event space. I'll be doing a Trailblazing Women event in late August. And we'll be hosting a series of amazing things throughout the year, both by me and if you know Zocalo, they're there now. It's such a rich environment. I can't even believe it. It's super fun. And we have most extraordinary state-of-the-art equipment. We have a virtual production stage.
Yeah.
We've got dozens of game engine ready computers. So it's really ready to engage with these new immersive technologies and help grow our system. And it's a very inexpensive master's program relative to other places. And therefore I'm able to diversify the demographics, really make opportunities for people to enter this, nascent but growing like crazy field.
Wow, that is absolutely amazing and exciting. There's so much to talk about after what you just said, but I do want to start with two things that I'm curious about. So this program, the master's program, that's not just for journalists.
Oh no, it's for anybody who is interested in narrative and emerging media.
Okay.
So we have like I said, a virtual production stage. Is if you know how The Mandalorian was made, if you go watch that video, that technology we have in our building to teach students how to go out into this, again, a field that's growing like crazy in Hollywood.
Right.
So it's really about narrative. Now, I would say that my expertise tends to be journalistic, and I have hired this extraordinary woman named Mary Matheson, also really a genius in this field, who started a program similar to this in London, and I was able to poach her from there
Wow.
to kind of work directly with me. And she's like this intrepid reporter who, cut her teeth in the mountains with guerrillas in Colombia, with the guerrillas.
Wow.
She's extraordinary. And so there is a strong journalistic bent here. It is a joint endeavor with
Sure.
the Concrete School of Journalism, as well as the Sidney Poitier New American Film School. We just want you to come in and think about how you can use emerging technologies to tell narratives.
Okay, that's amazing. And so my other question was, when you talked about wearing the suit, you're not only are you wearing the glasses, and let's pretend you're deaf or you're blind, you can still feel and hear. Is it ever going to be too much? And are the older people who are like in their 40s and up just not going to be able to handle it, and it's really all for the younger people? And is there going to be a point where at some point you're going to play a video game, you're going to be watching a video virtually with virtual reality and augmented reality? Is there going to be a point where you can't tell the difference between reality and it's going to look so real? We already have deep fakes. I mean, what's going on with all that?
So, I think it's not an irrelevant concern. I think that we always going to have to keep an eye on what most ethical frameworks
Right
approach this stuff. I use deepfakes in my piece going into Tribeca on Lyme disease for purpose. I use it to really cover a 30-year span, and so the doctor I follow, we use his early photographs, and then we go through the time with him and myself as a reporter. But Witness, which is one of the most amazing journalistic organizations, they did work using deepfakes to let people in Chechnya go undercover and tell what's going on, right? And protected their identity, but yet felt really seamless. So there's a positive thing with this culture, but there are really serious issues. Everybody's smartphone has a LiDAR camera now, right? The new ones all have LiDAR cameras. So what are people going to be filming when a bomb goes off? Are we going to let people step over the bodies? How are we going to ethically think about what material is going to be, journalistically provided? There are going to be some things that are going to get out the same way that gunman who in Buffalo live streamed.
Oh, yeah.
And that video, my son said to me when I talked about that, everybody I knew had watched it. He said, I started to watch it and then I just stopped. And so, what does it mean? Are we going to have to teach the critical thinking? Very important questions that, one of the things and one key course in our master's is a ethics course.
Yeah.
To grapple with some of these issues, privacy, these are really important questions you're raising.
Yeah. So what are you most excited about? I know we are kind of coming out of the pandemic. You've got the new school, you got the new location, you got the Peabody, you got a lot of things. This is a huge year for you. It's almost like it's a pivotal point where everything you've done is led up to this moment. It's kind of the end. Like I said, this pandemic feeling is kind of going away, and all the live in-person events and back to work is happening. So what are you most excited about in terms of technologies and also intersecting with, your job and your place in all of it?
Well, there was this time in which I think people felt like VR had kind of gone up and gone down or something, right? But suddenly there's this explosion. Meta, Facebook, has three new goggles types out. I know that Apple has taken their hardware guy and put it onto their AR VR team. So God knows what Apple's going to show up with soon.
Well, they're going to have the glasses, right? Like almost like what you're wearing. Yeah.
These are bone conduction audio. These are my Bluetooth glasses. I do all my phone calls in this, listen to my music in this.
Wow.
Pretty soon they're going to be my AR VR glasses too. But I love these glasses. They're Bose. Oh my God, I love these things. Anyway, I can ride my bike, and I can still hear for cars coming, so they're safer. But anyway, And I understand Google's now stepping back into the game too. So
Right.
I feel like
I'm not going to ask you to
now
say who has the best VR
that,
glasses.
well, so I'm going to go away from the hardware for a minute and talk about what then. And that's what I'm most excited about. Most excited about all the incredible creators out there and the beautiful things that are going to get made and the extraordinary experiences we're going to have. I'm already seeing this kind of explosion of women getting involved, which is just fabulous because it has been it was very different, certainly in the beginning of a lot of other technologies. So I am most delighted about the idea that all these artists and thinkers and creators and storytellers and educators and are starting to embrace these technologies for their practice.
And it's easier for people to get involved in creating and entertainment and movie making and journalism, all of it, because everybody has access to the phone, like you just said. Everybody has the technology in their hands to do it. It's not like you have to go be, in the mailroom and work your way all the way up through this major studio anymore. You can do it, and you can post it, and you can submit it, and you can, contribute to it. And I imagine in the metaverse, it'll be very open. I would imagine to a lot of different people's interpretation of places and things to see in there.
And experiences, like I said, that to me is going to be really interesting. And I hope that, I know that there's going to be propaganda and there's going to be the dark side is definitely, humans can be dark.
Sure.
But I really believe that we're going to have some very joyful and beautiful connecting experiences through these new technologies.
Yeah. And so one last question for you before we wrap it up. I'm excited to hear, have you heard of any businesses or companies, or have you thought of any ideas that a business is doing in the metaverse or with VR at least, that is just revolutionary, that you think a lot of other businesses should do or could do or will do?
Wow, that's a bit of a big question right now. I mean, I think of who's doing really cool, fun stuff. I mean, I feel like there are platforms that are coming out. Spatial's a really easy one. It's really fun.
I guess the meeting space is probably the main area. The kind of the collaborative hanging out.
I really, honestly, for whatever we think of Facebook, they have brought in some extraordinary talent. And I think some of the technologies that they're deploying are very interesting in terms of being able to have a digital twin of yourself in these spaces. There's some really interesting work being done there. I think businesses are just starting to recognize that this is a useful place for people to gather, right?
And it's real.
The other thing, Mozilla with Hubs is really fun.
What's that?
It's another metaverse earlier before Facebook's Horizon. And it's really easy to create your own space and come together and share. And I feel like Mozilla has been ahead of this curve, and they're really coming back in as well. And it's super exciting.
Awesome. Well, I'm super excited always about you as a thought leader and a speaker and a journalist and an educator. And I know that you are super excited about the school and everything that you're about to do. So I only can just imagine where you will be in about a year or even 6 months from now, and the things that you'll be creating. So thanks so much for taking the time to come on here with me and talk about all of this. I really enjoyed it. It's always a pleasure, Nonny.
Thank you so much, Chris. I really appreciate it.
Talk to you soon.
Bye now.